Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Royal Blue podcast. And as you can see, we've got a special guest with us today. We've got a regular guest, Gav Buckland. Hello, Gav. How are you?
Fine, all the best for the 2-0 away win on Saturday.
Of course, and we're joined today by Rob Sawyer and also by Rob's book here, Broken Dreams. We'll come on to that one later. Thankfully, there were no broken dreams for the Blues at Portman Road on Saturday. I've returned from there. Joe and I did a special podcast on the road on our way back. So if you want to listen to that one, that's an audio one, but we're now going to sit down safely back in the Echo office here with Rob and Gav to discuss that first away win of the season, first of the calendar year for Everton against newly promoted but big spending Ipswich Town. I think we were having a little chat before we started, Gav, off air there, and I said I thought it was important for Everton to set the tone on this sequence of fixtures that they've got, and I thought they did just that.
Yeah, especially we've not had an away win since December.
Yeah.
And so this run of 6 games, people are talking about, well, we can pick up a few points. Well, 4 of those games are away, aren't they? I think so. It was good to get that psychological burden out the way. And not only that, I thought we looked pretty solid. I have to temper that by saying that, with all due respect, I didn't think Ipswich looked that great, did they?
No. I thought they were there from the taking from a very early point in that match.
And, I thought at the one point I did say, and maybe because of Ipswich, we just looked physically fitter and stronger than what we've done at any point this season. We looked to have done a lot of work in the international break, and this thing about Dice, starting off slow fitness-wise and then building up. It's easy to criticise at the start of the season. We look physically faster and stronger than Ipswich, and that bodes well, I think, for the games to come. So yeah, I was very satisfied.
Yeah, Rob, it was a potential banana skin, I guess. In that, I would think that I'd see both teams were probably thinking this was a chance to sort of kick-start their season. Ipswich would probably have earmarked this as a good opportunity for their first Premier League win. So getting the result there was a doubly satisfactory, I guess, for the Blues.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people are already calling it a 6-pointer, which seems ridiculous when you're in October. But there's maybe some logic you do expect come the end of the season. Ipswich maybe towards that end of the table. As Gav said, I think solid win. Of course, could have been different. I think Ipswich skied one.
Yeah,
right
very
early on.
Yeah.
It's always those turning points in the game.
Yeah.
But once we got those 2 goals, it looked like should have been more perhaps.
Yeah.
But for a bit of profligacy, we could have been 3, even 4 up, which would have been a wonderful thing. But we'd take 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, like you say there, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, a couple of big one-on-one chances. We can move on to that, Gab, but let's talk about those 2 goals. I mean, I don't know where you want to start. I mean, do you want to start with Ndaya? Because should we just...
Yeah, I mean, it was... Again, this is it just reinforces to me that certainly the first goal, there's a massive gap between the Championship and the Premier League, isn't there? If you think that Ipswich got promoted last year, where did they finish second last year? I can't remember. And it obviously came up the previous season, I think. And you come into the Premier League and there's just a massive gap, isn't it? I just thought that was the type of defending that you saw there that you'll probably get away with in the Championship, but at the Premier League level, even against, like, with all due respect to Everton, a team in the bottom half of the Premier League at the moment, you're going to get punished for that. I mean, that was sort of stuff I play. No, but seriously, it was pretty amateurish, wasn't it? Really, what given
the hesitancy in the box,
but that being said, it was a great finish, wasn't it? You can strike the ball. I think Calvert-Lewin got out the way, didn't he? I think he might have taken his head off.
Yeah,
and that was a great finish. And Rob will probably talk about Keane's goal, but that was a great, great finish as well.
We'll move on to that. You can both talk about Michael Keane, but I want to say, Rob, because we've got you on for the first time. Iliman Ndiaye, I mean, what have you thought of the way he started Everton? He certainly seems to bring something different, something perhaps Everton haven't had for a while.
Yeah, he's impressed, hasn't he? He was on my radar a little bit. I know a Sheffield United fan, so a couple of years ago he was raving about him. So I always sort of just kept an eye. Of course, that was in the Championship, so it's always a question of how a player can step up. But kind of from the word go, you've just seen that he gets you off your seat, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's quick, but he's hard working, and obviously he can strike a ball, as he showed on Saturday. I mean, when was the last player that we had that actually when a player received the ball, you got that excitement.
Yeah.
I mean, Delafeu had his moments, maybe Ross Barkley in the early days, but there's not been many, has it? So it's great that we've got that, but also, as I say, he puts the shift in.
Yeah.
He wants the ball, but he'll get back, he'll track back. I mean, you know, a fantastic buy, and, you know, I feel lucky that we got him, to be honest, and the other clubs didn't go in for him, because you would hope there's more to come as well.
Yeah, that's the thing, Gav, isn't it? I mean, you wonder why didn't other clubs come in? I mean, it could, you know, is it kudos to Everton's recruitment area? Obviously, probably you saw something that maybe others didn't. I don't know.
Only been a Sheffield United, hadn't he? He played in the Premier League in the first Sheffield
Very
United.
briefly.
Very briefly, yeah. You just don't know. Some people, some players just not fancied, are they? And sometimes got to step in. What I would say though, it's still early days, isn't it? It's only 8 games.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to judge players over half season, 3/4 of the season. If you're still like this when we get to April, I'll be really impressed. So there's a lot of hard work done, but I like him. I like there's a little bit of, he got fouled, didn't he? There's a little bit of Gianfranco's older, and when he's got like 2 or 3 players around him, he can twist and turn quite quickly and get himself out of trouble. He did that on Saturday, ended up getting fouled, didn't he? Which is helpful for to have a player like that who plays to our strengths, and that were good from free kicks. And I think also he can dribble, but he's got a bit of pace over distance, hasn't he? You know, like people compare him to Stephen Pienaar, but Pienaar was like a player. He was quick, but only quick over
a short burst.
He wasn't going to somebody who's going to get it and bomb down.
No, lung busting runs.
Yeah. Where Ndiaye, I think, has got that in his locker. I'd like to see him put his head up a little bit, and you know, sometimes I think he can hold on to the ball too long. I like to see his final ball into the area improve and to be a bit more productive there. There was one on Saturday, I think, where he done really well on the byline. He pulled it back to McNeil, and it was just the wrong. You expected when the first saw it, I thought McNeil that should have taken the shot the first time. But when you looked at the ball again, it came far too quickly and at the sort of wrong angle for him, so he had to take a touch. And it was a pretty straightforward pass. So I like to see his delivery into the area improve. But apart from that, he works hard defensively, doesn't he, as well, like Pienaar, and great buy so far.
Yeah, that was a caveat with Gav. But Robbie's actually shown a certain robustness. It's not these sort of players you think maybe, you know, but bit of a show pony, but that's not the case. As Gav says, you know, he does put a shift in as well.
Yeah, he's no shrinking violet. As Gav said, he's got that low centre of gravity, so he's hard to knock off the ball. Great balance as well. But there's something about him. And he's not one to just tumble and stay on the ground. He will try and keep going. So there's occasions where he could have gone down and tried to win the free kick, but he shrugs them off and he tries to break through. So great attitude. As Gav says, you know, we can't judge a player too quickly. No. I look at Irabonum, who had a great start to the season, and I still think has got lots of potential. Yeah. But we've seen players before. I was rereading the book about Everton when they won the league in '87, and how we had Kevin Langley. Came in and sort of, wouldn't say set the world on fire, but came from Wigan, had a great start, but then just faded after maybe a couple of months. So we should never get carried away. We tend to be that way. Then we're sort of all in, and then suddenly a player's rubbish, and then you know, let's not get carried away. But the signs are really promising, and let's just hope he keeps injury free and just keeps developing. Yeah, well, Sean Dyche has referenced that, the hero to zero mentality, and back again at Everton. But obviously in between those 2 goals, Gav, there was the penalty incident. I mean, it was a penalty for the time, and then it wasn't. I mean, what did you make of all that?
When I first saw him real time, I thought that's a pen. But when you looked at the replay, it wasn't exactly the same as Calvert-Lewin against Newcastle, because I think it was a Clark, was it? It was going to ground, wasn't he, a little bit? But when you saw there was no contact from McNeil, thought that's not a penalty on the basis that Calvert-Lewin's wasn't a penalty, and they were both correct decisions, because you know, I spoke about this a lot after the Calvert-Lewin incident. The law's quite clear. You know, it's not, people just see somebody impede and somebody in the penalty area and it's like, that's a penalty, they've stopped them doing, you know, having the shot officer. Well, that's not enough for the penalty according to the laws of the game. It has to be impede with contact. Exactly. So you've got to hit, as the defender, you've got to hit the forward physically. Just to impede them is not a penalty. So that's why it wasn't a penalty for Calvert-Lewin. It wasn't a penalty for the one with Brighton at the start of the season, and that made it.
Was Lewis Dunk, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't a penalty on Saturday. In the laws of the game, and this is happening. I mean, Rob probably remember this as well. In the laws of the game, you could argue it is a free kick. And years ago, I mean, going back years ago, there used to be free kicks awarded in the penalty area, if you remember, didn't you, for obstruction?
Have the wall on the line, wouldn't you?
Yeah. There was occasionally, you see, more than once during the season, that referee would give it a free kick in the penalty area. But that's gone, hasn't it? Sadly. It's great when the players are on the line, and that was great, but that was never a penalty. Having said that, you just thought, when he went to the monitor, you just thought, there's going to be chaos if this gets awarded, from Everton fans, and quite rightly so, because it was quite, it was pretty similar to the Calvert-Lewin incident. Both were not given, and both are sound decisions. I don't really understand the hoop hard over the Calvert-Lewin thing. Read the laws of the game, impede with contact, and that was the same thing applied on Saturday, so not a problem.
As an Evertonian, Rob, was your heart still in your mouth somewhat? Did you think, no, he's going up?
Until you see the referee walk away and start doing that sign. Yeah, absolutely. You never. And there's all shades of grey, aren't there? Even within the rules, there's always a degree of interpretation as to how much a player is impeding or not. But once I saw the replay, I was pretty confident on Saturday.
Yeah, once you've seen it,
overturned.
Yeah. And there's always an air of inevitability once they do go over to that screen, isn't there? I mean, we've not always seen it that way, but it does tend to be most times once he's been asked to go over. That's the way it's going.
Operated the fact that you're looking at real time, give a penalty, look at it again, and it's clearly not a penalty. So VAR did its job there. So no issues from me. If they'd been kept the penalty, it may have had a slightly different views, but the law is quite clear. You see it, as I say, last couple of weeks, you impede them in the area, that's a penalty. That's not a penalty.
Yeah.
You have to impede them with contact.
Yeah. I mean, Kieran McKenna wasn't happy, but I guess you'd say
which manager it is when he awarded the penalty.
Yeah. One thing that we did have to do a double take for was Michael Keane's strike. Gav, I mean, we've talked a lot of it. He is now widely regarded as one of the best finishers of the club, but that's on his right foot. This was his left.
I think he did saying disservice to him, saying the double take.
Yeah.
Because if there's one Everton player, I mean, it was his left foot that you know he's going to cleanly strike a ball in those circumstances. It's Michael Keane, isn't it? I know Joe was saying last week, we were talking about McNeil on the pod. I was on it. I was listening to saying about the one Everton played, one like 20, 25 yards out with a clear shot on goal is McNeil. Mm-hmm. And I think that's right, obviously. But I think Michael Keane is in that category, isn't it? And that was a great finish, wasn't it? I mean, with his left foot. But typical of Keane, I think. I wouldn't say it's something that it wasn't unexpected, given the way he strikes a ball. And the way he finishes, he's such a clean striker and a clean finisher, and that was a brilliant goal. As somebody said, it was like Batistu's famous goal at Arsenal, wasn't it? Where he from on the other side of the pitch where he hit it into the roof of the net with a load of venom. That was a great goal, and in keeping with his overall performance, and in keeping with one or two exceptions with his performances so far this season. Really, it's good to see him getting. Clapped at the end and appreciated by fans because he's deserved it. Yeah,
getting compared to Batty goal, that's some going, isn't it? It's just another day at the office though for Gav, and with Michael Keane. It was an incredible strike though, wasn't it, Rob? And like I said, I know we've seen those. That was it, the howitzer against Tottenham Hotspur from distance, but that was on the right peg. I mean, I suppose he did the Crystal Palace shades of that. That was his left foot as well. But incredible strike.
Yeah, I mean, that Palace one was more of a controlled, very good finish. This one, I mean, and he even just sort of ran onto the ball, he's not the quickest turner, is Michael, but on this occasion, he sort of quickly turned, ran onto it, and there was no hesitation, was there? I mean, on his supposedly weaker foot, that was some strike, and I'm really pleased for him. We all know Michael Keane's weaknesses, whether it's his turn, his pace, lack of pace, or his slow turning, and sometimes confidence, but there is a player there. And, he's one player that I'm always delighted to see do well. And it was great to see people cheering his name at the end.
Yeah. Well, I spoke to him in the tunnel afterwards, after you got the article up with that one. He was talking about, could he ever play striker, because obviously his twin brother is a striker as well.
Played at Ipswich, didn't he?
He marked in pre-season at Deepdale, saying tussling, the most tussling they've done between each other since they're in the womb, I think. Going head to head. But he said, goals are certainly in the family, and he admits, he's got the technique for striking, but he said, to be fair, that being a striker, being a centre forward, there's much more to it, and he rather humbly said that he couldn't do what Dominic Calvert-Lewin does, although he could possibly give him a few shooting lessons after the weekend.
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, to be fair, the other thing about the goal which made was a great play by McNeil, wasn't it?
Yeah, for the ball to turn
in a tight space, being able to twist and turn and have the football intelligence to slip it through. I was reading before the game, I've stats about everything. He's got the most through, whatever it would say, effective through balls through the back line of any player in the Premier League.
I thought you didn't like them stats, Gav.
I don't, but only when I want to play sport. If it disputes me view, I don't like them, but if it supports me view, I do. No, seriously, at only five I know. But, that was another great pass, wasn't it, through the defence? Not only that, but to get the ball and manoeuvre it round, and it was a great ball, great finish. And we don't see many goals like that by Everton over the years. Really, over the last few years, we're saying about NGI, but we've not seen until this season not many goals where it's been a through ball from the number 10 position for somebody to run onto. Where it's been really clever, and that was good to see. Good goal.
Well, Ian's out of shot at the moment, but he's that was McNeil from the number 10 position.
That's early days as well, isn't it?
But in terms of Michael Keane's all-round performance, I mean, I ended up giving him a 9 on my ratings. I thought maybe got a 10 if it wasn't for the booking. But the fact that it was a left foot finish. But I think just doing his day job, the bread and butter, the defensive side thing, I thought he was really good.
But it goes back to Ipswich. The Lap's had a decent season, hasn't he? But he spent most of the time, from what I could see, trying to kick our players, didn't he? The Lap, he was quite feisty, wasn't he, on Saturday? But defence. I was having a look at Newcastle and Saturday. How many shots we've had against us on target? Must only be a handful, mustn't it?
Yeah, because Pickford didn't really have a save, so about 10 minutes from the end, it was a bit of a scuff shot.
So across 2 games, 4 or 5 maybe. So defensively as a unit, we've looked a lot stronger. And, and 8 points from 4 games. I mean, and in those 4 games, we only really had one bad half, haven't we? Which is the first half against Palace, and in the other 3.5 games, we've been solid, haven't we? And Keane has been part of that, but so I think obviously Ashley Young's done well as well, hasn't he? I thought Mikalenko picked up, especially in the second half on Saturday. So we look a lot like the team we were 12 months ago. When we had last year, about October, November, December time, where we had that run of 9 wins in 13 games, something like that, beating teams who you would expect to beat. We looked on Saturday that we're running into that type of form now, which is good. As you say, Chris, because we're playing those type of fixtures over the next month. So in that context, I was pleased. I was pleased with Keane, but he's been part of a defensive unit that looked a bit more solid recently. Yeah,
and Rob, I mean, it was certainly a great turnaround, but also the fact that Jared Branthwaite wasn't involved, people would be disappointed about that, but for Keane and the rest of the back four to pick up another clean sheet.
Yeah, and obviously Branthwaite might be available next week, maybe he won't be, but I don't think we can, he's come back from quite an injury.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised even if he comes back, there might be niddles in the weeks ahead. It's often the way when a player's coming back, so it's great that we know that we've got that solidity now at centre half, and also, the full backs as well. So if Jared's available for Saturday, fantastic, and then there's a decision for Sean Dyche to make. If not, then at least we've got that basis to this basis to build on with the Keane and Tarkowski partnership. And talking of Tarkowski, I noticed he put in one of his usual reducer challenges on 10 minutes.
Gav said his hard man moments.
Touched on before.
Once again,
it was legal, but it was forceful.
It was on the edge, wasn't it? He does that once a game, and I think he does need to do it.
Yeah,
to be fair,
the old reducer.
It's
because you get it wrong.
Yeah, and the part of the pitch you're on, I don't think he needs to do that. And he got away with it on Saturday, but sometimes, as you've seen recently, you don't get away with it, and that causes major issues. I suppose the The question there, though, isn't it, really, about Branthwaite? Is it a given that he comes in ahead of Keane?
It'd be pretty harsh to drop him after a performance like that, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Bear in mind, like the weak area, I know he's been injured, he was talking about it last week, wasn't he? Has been Tarkowski, isn't it, really, in the defence. I can't see that happening. But if Keane does get dropped, he can probably, he's been, never thought you'd ever say this, would you, really? But it's good. That would be harshly done. Unless you play striker. Because I think it was the Brentford game last year, wasn't it? I think he was going to come on as sub at the end, didn't he? But I think as a striker, I think there was an injury, wasn't it, at the end of the, and it'd be it'd be useful to say, but that was a wonderful strike.
Yeah. Well, I seem to remember when obviously Everton had that late win at Wolves a couple of seasons ago when Yerry Mina scored. Keane was up front then, wreaking havoc.
Yeah. Well, he provided the assist for the Yerry Mina's goal, didn't he? He did. Nice bit of play by the byline. Yeah.
So he can make him as well as take him.
Well, he's good. That's the thing, isn't it? The one thing you'd say with Keane of all the centre halves is that he's the one with the ball. When he's got the ball at his feet, he's most comfortable with, And when we played three at the back, he should have been the one playing in the middle, because that's what you're doing, three at the back. You have your middle centre half is the one who can bring the ball out, and he's the one who can bring the ball out, and he can ping the ball around the pitch. He's a clean striker of the ball, and we know that. But as Rob says, is he has got other weakness. He's got weaknesses that are, quite apparent in his game, but he's got a lot of attributes as well. And on the right day, if it's he can look a decent player against opposition that are not going to sort of get him turn him in the area, not going to run past
catching
him
with a high line. That
kind of thing. Which he can. Well, he is vulnerable too, but on Saturday against modest opposition, he's not going to struggle, I think, and he did well, and the goal's bonus.
Yeah, and Rob, we're talking about Keane's finishing, but I thought it was a good all-round striker's performance from Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but, he missed a couple of big chances, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. It's those one-on-ones, or the one-on-ones where he's got a bit of a run-in on goal. Yeah. I think we all know it's not his strong point. Yeah. He's more of an instinctive in-the-box player, as Ancelotti got the best out of him. Yeah. He tried to go low, didn't he, on a couple of times when maybe a more confident dink over the keeper would have put us 3 up. You could see the frustration on his face, a couple of times when it just wouldn't go in. But that shouldn't detract from a good performance leading the line on Saturday. Yeah.
Gav, it was also a new combination in the middle of the park as well, because obviously the first 4 games of the season it was a Robinham and a Drissagay, and then for the last 3 games it's been Orel Mangala and Decore. So we had Drissagay and Decore together for the first time. Obviously an effective start for them. I wonder if that is, we keep talking all season about midfield balance, but I wonder if there's much scope for that one going forward.
I don't like Decore playing there. I don't think he's quick enough, and I don't think his passing is of sufficient quality to play in that in midfield. I much prefer Mangala in there with
Agreed. I think he might have played if he hadn't been on international duty.
Yeah, and against that, I think better opposition in the middle. He'll just get run past, I think, Decore, and he's not the best, as we know, with the ball of his feet, and especially if he's got a number 10 playing in front of him. I think he's got to play he's got to play a deeper role. I think he will get found out against better opposition. But he did well. He did well on Saturday. I'm not going to complain. I thought the best bit on Saturday was the move in the first half. This was fantastic. The one it was Young got in the left back, and it was a Garnegate did the dummy by the touchline. Right. Yeah, and then ran on. He played the great ball through to Calvert-Lewin behind, and it was like, watching Arsenal under Wenger, it was fantastic. It was so un-Everton, but it was, it was the best bit of play I've seen from Everton for many a long time. And at Decore, certain games like Saturday effective, but against better opposition, and therefore most games say Mangala for me.
What about yourself, Rob?
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Yeah. And obviously the options were limited on Saturday. Like I say, Mangala probably coming back from international duty, Garner out, Irabunam out. So there weren't that many options for Dyche. But on the day, like I say, no complaints about any player on the day. Yeah, everybody was a solid 7 or above.
Yeah, they certainly were my player rating, so vindicated.
People at the keeper would be turning the grave. You're giving 7s and 8s and 9s.
Well, you got to enjoy these moments when they come, Gav, haven't you?
I think so, and that's. I think that's fair enough. Yeah. It was good that we just looked. compare and contrast that to the Palace game at home, which is only, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And certainly the first half, you're looking at two different teams. We just look physically stronger than Ipswich, which is not necessarily because they've come up from the Championship. And I always think clubs who come up from the Championship, they do look physically.
Yeah, so tough physics.
Yeah. But I thought we played well, and it was good to see them look. The fitness has gone up a notch.
Yeah, and finally, before we start talking about your book, Rob, obviously from an Everton point of view, we hope it's a platform to build from. But I just wonder if it was a reality check for Ipswich Town in terms of their Premier League aspirations.
I mean, we're talking about teams coming up, and I was thinking of Burnley the year before, where again sort of blitzed the Championship, playing lovely attacking football, and there was elements of that with Ipswich. But then, as you say, you come up to the Premier League, and you can't replicate that. You have to be pragmatic, and you find that the hard way. So there's food for thought for McKenna, what he does to solidify them and grind out some results.
Yeah. Right, so we'll move on now. We'll just get that on shot. Broken Dreams, Everton, The War, and Goodison's Lost Generation, which is Rob's book. And of course, for both times that football stopped for the war, obviously they played on for a year in the First World War, which was highly controversial compared to seemingly the more patriotic sports like rugby and cricket. And obviously Everton were champions in 1915, and then the same happened in 1939, when Everton had just won their, it was the 5th title, wasn't it, Rob? Just trying to think off the top of my head, see a great team there, inspired by young Tommy Lawton, who'd finished top scorer for a second consecutive season. Ted Sager, Joe Mercer, T.G. Jones, players like that. Tory Gillick as well. The whole. You're going to tell to us about it, Rob? What a talented team it was, and as the title suggests, it was a great missed opportunity because of the greatest conflict in human history. Broke up one of Everton's great teams who looked destined for greatness over a prolonged period.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a sad title, doesn't it? I hope there's some optimism in there, because one thing in the book is that before Everton won the league in 38-39, they were close to relegation the season before. So I hope that this maybe gives us some positivity in the situation we find ourselves, that there always can be a turn, and things can go on an upward trajectory. I've always been interested in the 30s. It was the era that my dad grew up watching Everton in, so he saw Dixie Dean at the tail end when he was past his best, and then my dad saw sort of Tommy Lawton come in. For my dad, this was the best Everton team.
Okay.
He liked the team in the 60s.
Yeah.
You watched the team in the 80s with me, and would always sort of say, "Peter Reid's no match for Bobby Collins." And all that. But for him, the 38-39 team was the best. Real school of science stuff. So it's always been in mind to sort of dig a bit deeper. I wrote about T.G. Jones a few years ago. So this is just, it seemed natural to sort of go on a step further and look at that whole team and how it came together, how it won the league, and then how it fell apart because of things beyond their control.
Yeah, it's actually elaborate more about the actual different figures within the team, because it was a real sort of good combination. It's a real sort of nice blend, and I think historians look back at the 1915 title wins and not necessarily think that Everton were destined for greatness over a prolonged period, whereas this team really did look primed for continued success.
Yeah, that's right. You'd struggle to name more than a couple of players from that 1915 team. Sam Chedzoy, maybe Bobby Parker. Obviously, Everton in the 30s were a different kettle of fish. We'd won the title. We'd been relegated.
Boom and bust, wasn't it?
We won the title in 28 with 60 goals. Got relegated 2 years later. Straight back up. Won the title at the first attempt back in the first division in 32. Won the cup the next year. So you're thinking, here we go. This is the Everton empire growing. And then we just sort of tailed off and hit this sort of fallow period, and just this sort of downhill trajectory till, like I say, it looked like we were going to get relegated. And then the powers that be brought back a couple of the veterans who'd been involved in the early 30s. Jock Thompson, this sort of tough sort of wing half, Scottish wing half.
Yeah, I found that intriguing, like you're saying, a couple of years in reserves, and yet he's back there.
And this is it. Players would be just dropped for a couple of years, and they would just ply their trade in the reserves in the Central League. Not be transferred, and then eventually the directors would say, "Okay, right, we'll bring you back," and in they came. So him and Billy Cook, who was another very tough player, an Irish fullback, sort of came back in, signed a couple of players like Wally Boys, a left winger, and just sort of staved off relegation in that 37-38 season. And then the players went to this tournament in Glasgow, in Scotland, in the spring of '38, and several players, Tommy Lawton notably, said that just bonded them. So you had these few players who'd been around since the early '30s: Ted Sagar, like I say, Jock Thompson, Billy Cook, and then these other players coming in. You Torry Gillick, mercurial talent who'd come down from Rangers, Alex Stevenson, a sort of tiny little sort of Alex James kind of inside forward. Obviously Lawton, Jones, Joe Mercer. So that blend of youth and experience, and it just gelled. They say that sort of month more or less they spent in Scotland. So when they came back for the next season, they just hit the ground running. They just clicked. They brought in a lad called Stan Bentham, who would, again, one who'd been in the reserves in and out for years, but he got the nod at the start of the season for another lad who was injured, and he was just like this sort of the water carrier, what we call him now. You know, he was the Dennis Stevens of his day, if you go back to the '60s, and he did the hard work to let all these sort of the other four forwards do their thing. So it was just almost by accident, we ended up with this very balanced team, very tight unit, who could just play beautiful football, and they just sort of went off at a canter. I think they won six matches on the bounce at the start, and Tommy Lawton was just proving himself a worthy successor to Dean. I mean, that must have been the hardest job in the world to.
Yeah, but he excelled and he did it.
And he did. Yeah. And I don't think anybody else could have done that.
Yeah.
I mean, he called himself a big head. You know, you'd see interviews later where he'd say he was a big head, but you needed to be to fill those boots.
Yeah.
Like he did.
And he was only 19.
I know. When the season started, he was still a teenager.
Still a teenager, wasn't he?
Imagine that.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah, and I know it might sound churlish or flippant things. You know, it's talking about the millions of people that obviously died in the Second World War. But in terms of missed opportunities for Everton or what could have been, I mean, it's really got to be up there, hasn't it? You know, that almost lost generation of players, as your title suggests.
Yeah, I mean, it's 7 seasons.
Yeah,
gone. You know, and most of these, hardly any of the teams are active service. What happened is you either, if you had a trade, you stayed as a civilian and worked at the shipyards or at the Burton Wood. One of the players worked at the US Air Force Base at Burton Wood, near where IKEA is now. Or you've joined the forces as a physical training instructor.
Yeah.
So you were there. You know, you're never on the front line. You were there just to get other servicemen fit. And there's probably a reluctance to actually have servicemen on the front line because it wouldn't do morale much good if Tommy Lawton got killed in action. And they did get a bit of stick for that. Nothing like in the First World War, maybe, with people not signing up, but there was some resentment. But yeah, they played forces football, exhibition matches, wartime internationals, which were never recognised officially, which I would argue was unfair on some of those players. And then you had these sort of regional leagues that went on. So Everton will be playing Chester, Tranmere, Blackpool, stuff like that. But the players would be doing their day job and then just turning up at Goodison if available on a Saturday. So it wasn't, it served a purpose, it served morale, but this wasn't real football. So when these guys came back, they'd lost, in most cases, their best years of development as much as anything.
Yeah, and as well as the war itself, I guess obviously you got the big character there, Theo Kelly. For those who aren't aware, it means he's the man who creates the Everton crest, doesn't he? And then the Latin motto. But he's also the man who falls out with the likes of Tommy Lawton, Joe Mercer, and T.G. Jones to various extents. And it's not just the passing of time; it's maybe also the interactions with Mr. Kelly that sees people heading out the exit door.
Yeah, I try and give a balanced view of Kelly. He was a very talented organiser, administrator. By the end of the war, he became the manager, secretary manager. So we were edging towards finally having a manager, although it would be 48 when Cliff Britton came in, when Everton really had its first proper manager with full
We were discussing
control.
this, weren't we, Gav, about proper managers and not.
I think Rob's being quite modest because, of course, you have your relatives of very
mine was the secretary back in the day before. In the late, just after the First World War.
So was he?
He was secretary. And then became a director.
So, but William was
Bill
Sawyer.
Sawyer, yeah.
So what relation would he have been?
Great granddad.
Yeah.
So Mr. Keller following in his footsteps.
So he was like technically a sort of manager.
They basically oversaw the running of the club. So you'd have the trainer who would get the players fit. How you played was kind of the directors would have a committee. The secretary would have an input in that and also help oil the wheels, make signings. But so it was a funny thing. It was like a collective. So the secretary was the main man in kind of making the club tick over, but he wasn't the person who devised the tactics. So Kelly, a lot of attributes. And reading the book and when I was researching the book, he was very popular with the team. Yes, Dixie Dean wasn't happy how he was sold, and it could have been handled better, but Dixie was over the hill, as is evidence when he went to Notts County. He played a handful of games. His legs had gone, so could have been handled better. By the end of the war, I think Theo wasn't the man he had been. I think that he'd kept the club going during the war, but maybe, that had exhausted him. I think he liked to drink, frankly.
Okay.
Smoked like a chimney. So he probably wasn't in the best of health in the 40s. And yes, the way he let Joe Mercer go effectively said, here's your boots. Off you go to Arsenal. And of course, Joe Mercer then becomes Arsenal captain, wins the league, wins the cup. He's still playing into the mid-50s. Clearly, he makes mistakes. But I think the book tries to bring balance as to what he did bring in terms of actually bonding that team in 38-39 and just being a great administrator. So,
Yeah. Just while we've got you on then, finally then, Rob, obviously, like I said, broken dreams, but it's Goodison Park's final season now. I mean, just from a personal point of view, I mean, how much are you looking forward to the move to the new stadium? And what are your emotions like right now in terms of saying goodbye to the grand old lady, as it were?
Well, we talk about it a lot, don't we? I've kind of been in a bit of denial, but now we're into this last season. It's like counting down on a calendar, isn't it? How many fixtures are on? Once it gets into single figures, then it's going to be emotional. But I would have loved to have stayed at Goodison.
Okay,
absolutely loved. But that ship sailed probably 25 years ago. That's when, if the club was going to invest in Goodison, redeveloped. That should have been in the 1990s or earlier, arguably.
When the park ends and they should have built on in it.
Should have been a double decker or had the ability to extend that. So to move forward, Bromley, down at Bromley Moor Dock, it's the way forward. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to be weeping buckets when we play Southampton at the end of the season.
Well, hopefully that's just because we're moving on.
Can I ask one question, Rob? Just I'll say two things. The first thing I'd say when it was we've done books, haven't we? And I was researching books on Everton in the 60s. This was the team spoken about, like in the Echo and so on, like as the gold standard team, not just for Everton on Merseyside football history.
Okay.
The 38, 39 team that this set standards that before the 60s no other team had reached. And I was just wondering, how many, if you all do Everton all-time 11s and stuff, how many from this team will get in an Everton all-time 11, do you think?
What a question. Yeah.
In fact, just from my research, because obviously there's no footage and it's so frustrating, there's no film of these guys, but I would say from my research, I'll probably have at least 3, maybe 4 of that team. Yeah. Lawton, Tommy Jones, definitely. But Gillick, you mentioned Torrey Gillick, mercurial player, had his good days, bad days. That season, he was unbelievable. So, definitely at least 3. Maybe more. But if I had to pick a team, of a full team, that was just like some of Howard's teams in the 80s. It's just balanced.
Some T.G. Jones, just to explain. T.G. Jones.
He was this wonderful centre half. Yeah. He could defend. He was 6'2" probably, but he was more than that. He could stride forward. He could ping the ball around. He was super confident. I mean, people when John Stones was coming through, best part of a decade ago, everyone thought this is the man. Well, T.G. Jones could do all that and more because Jones was big, strong, dominant in the air, which maybe Stones wasn't so much then. So if you think of John Stones on steroids, that's what T.G. Jones was.
But to be doing it on those pitches with that type of football and those footballs
boots,
as well.
Literally in boots. Yeah.
And for me, I definitely agree about Tommy Lawton. We've had countless conversations over the years about Tommy Lawton. I always think, how good Tommy Lawton is that when he, at the club centenary in 1977-78, they did, as you would do, what we're doing now, the all-time greatest 11.
Okay.
And it's a testimony to Tommy Lawton's greatness at the age of 19. That 20% of the fans voted him as centre forward ahead of Dixie Dean.
Right.
And this is a player who had basically 2 seasons
of
first team football.
At 1920. And people who saw both, 20% of them put Lawton ahead of Dixie Dean, which if you think about it, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, goal scoring machine, certainly in domestic football, but Jimmy Greaves would say. And even in Wales football, but there's still 20% of fans said that Tommy Lawton was a better player, and I think that's. I think of all the ones there, he lost his best year, so he was 1920, and then he's 27, isn't he? And he was obviously, we've spoken about this, that he was affected because of that gap. But he walks into an all-time 11 for
Absolutely.
me.
Absolutely.
It'd be intriguing to see just while those figures would be altered, Gav, if, like you say, he hadn't lost those years to the war. I mean, could it, it could have even been a close call, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But massive fan of Tommy Lawton. We've had lots of conversations comparing Keane and Lawton over the years.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Well,
it's a brilliant book, by the way. And Rob does better than anybody. Is captures this period. And periods before better than anybody now, and it's top class, and I wouldn't expect anything less from Rob, to be fair.
There you go.
I'll leave the more modern era to Gav.
No.
Inverted commas,
No, it is. It is, because the backstories and the hinterland of the players is just unbelievable.
And the way the journalists wrote you had, obviously, we've got the Echo now, we had about 4
the
papers
pen names,
covering,
didn't he?
The pen name, your B Ranger, all the pen names. So it's just wonderful to dive into that and try and tell the story.
Yeah, well, Christmas is coming up, isn't it, for the Evertonian in your life? So thanks for Rob coming in. Thanks for Gav for coming in. We'll be back with you, previewing the Fulham game later in the week. So I've been your host, Chris Beesley. This has been the Royal Blue Podcast.